Good, good evening, everybody. Matt, Derrick, Chiefs Digest here for tonight's live Q&A. We are going to cross our fingers on the hotel Wi-Fi hanging in there for us, and I'll probably try to skip down to the bottom of the comments. So if I disappear or you can't hear me or see me or anything, you might just give me a heads up in the comments. I'm going to try and stay up to date at the end of the chat. So hopefully, if anything goes astray, you can let me know. And I'm going to be going through the questions and flagging some things here pretty soon. So, and I may just, try to get straight into questions tonight and maybe not do much of a monologue. There's probably a little bit of a monologue to do because obviously we had a pretty good day of news. A lot of things coming out from Andy Reid and Brett Veach today. Obviously, I think most of the things from the podium appearances that both the coach and the GM made today made the headlines. Obviously, some things that were not said or done on the podium also caught some attention, and dealing with Snead and the franchise tag and where all of that sits. And yeah, Brandon, I almost said I was here 7 minutes early so that, wouldn't give me too much grief. But and I literally just jumped off of over with Ryan Tracy over Locked On Chiefs and had to make a quick bathroom break before I went over here. So now all the sausage about the details of the live stream and how it all works and everything. So absolutely. Flag anything for me if there's anything that goes on wrong with the stream, let me know. Hopefully we will hang in there with the Wi-Fi from the hotel here in Indianapolis. But yeah, obviously a lot of news coming down today. The Snead details, I think, are obviously the biggest thing. That it kind of had a little bit of Tyreek Hill kind of deja vu is the way things move pretty quickly today, and obviously it's not progressed to that point, and I'm not sure that it will anytime soon. But it was a pretty steady progression because Brett Veach was on the podium talking about how hey, he was asked about tagging Chris Jones or Snead, and the answer was basically yes. It's I am reading the comments, and it's rough already. I'll try to focus and not get distracted. But basically answer is yes, tag one of them. Then Brett came over and talked to a handful of us with Kansas City writers who were there in a separate scrum, and said a little bit more as far as much more likely that Snead was going to get tagged. He mentioned Chris Jones's massive tag number if they would use the franchise tag on him at the cost. Remember, it would be about $32.2 million versus a $19.8 million tag for L'Jarius. But here's my take on it. And this could be wrong, but I'm basing this off of what I've been told. Certainly reading between the tea leaves, a couple of things to mix my metaphors, and inferring a little bit. But here's how I kind of take the news today and what we all heard. And as far as the Chiefs also exploring the idea of tagging L'Jarius and letting him search for an offer and finding a package and a deal that the Chiefs wanted to do a tag and trade. Right now, there's no legal tampering window, so it really isn't until next Monday, the 4th, 2 weeks from now. It's the beginning of the new league years on the 13th. So on March 11th is when there can be that hated term of legal tampering, where teams can start negotiating with a player. Obviously, that comes after the tag deadline, which is next Tuesday, 3 p.m. Central Time, that the Chiefs have to make a decision on the franchise tag. By publicly declaring this and giving L'Jarius an opportunity in his representation to seek a trade, they're letting him essentially have that window open early so that L'Jarius can kind of learn what is out there on the market. Because what I'm getting, inferring from a lot of this and from what I've been told, and certainly what's kind of out there, is that I think the Chiefs and Chris are obviously a lot closer on numbers than it looks like that the Chiefs and L'Jarius are. And a lot of that is just because I think there's probably a disconnect on what L'Jarius's market is out on the open marketplace, because he's got a lot of strikes against him. And I mean, that's which is unfortunate to me for L'Jarius, because none of them are his fault. He was a late bloomer and a late player coming out. So here he is going out and getting a chance for his first contract extension, his first chance to test free agency, and he's 27 years old. Denzel Ward got big contract with Cleveland. He hit free agency when he was 24. That's a big difference. If you're signing your first free agent deal at 24 or 25, it's a lot different than you're signing it at 27. And, so, I mean, that's a big part of it. And two, there are concerns about L'Jarius's knee. Obviously, whether it was in retrospect a sit-in last year, a sit-out, with him not working in training camp, but the Chiefs obviously also kept him almost the entire season on the injury report with that knee. There are concerns, and there are probably some teams that would like to get the medicals and get a look at L'Jarius's knee before they even offered him a contract, much less, made a deal with him. Obviously, anything that he does is going to require a physical eventually before the deal's done. But that's a concern out there as well. So there's a couple of things working against L'Jarius. And then the other thing that's working against the Chiefs and L'Jarius on this has been trade compensation for corners has not been good of late. Really, I mean, remember last year, Jalen Ramsey went from the Rams to the Dolphins for a third-round pick. And even though Jalen's older, it was, I think Jalen's 28 when that was done. So it was only a year older than L'Jarius when that deal got done. But that was a third-rounder for Jalen Ramsey. And most people around the league will argue that Jalen Ramsey is a better player than L'Jarius Sneed. I am not one of those people. I mean, I think that L'Jarius is still an ascending player. I think Jalen is taking a step back. So my own personal opinion is that I think L'Jarius is a better player. That is not a shared opinion around the league. So when we're talking about now the idea of putting a package together for L'Jarius and getting a trade return for him, well, I mean, I think you're going to have to be ready for the possibility that the Chiefs, the best they might be able to get for L'Jarius is a second in return. And on top of that, I think L'Jarius is going to, get some information back from other teams that might not be what he wants. So if this goes from L'Jarius is looking for, and just hypothetically say, a top of the market deal, kind of, for $18 million a year, then I don't know if that money's out there. And if that's the case, and all of a sudden, let's say hypothetically the Chiefs are offering 15, and that's the best offer that's out there. I mean, staying in Kansas City, I mean, I know is L'Jarius's preferred choice, but if a team's willing to pay you a lot more money than the Chiefs are willing to pay you, then that makes a difference. So there's a lot of moving parts to this. There's, to me, also nothing set in stone. We're still a week away from the tag deadline, so a lot can still happen. To me, it's like multiple options are on the table. I mean, Chris Jones could still get tagged and traded. L'Jarius could get tagged and traded. The Chiefs could sign both of them. Both of them could leave. I mean, everything is still, to me, a moving piece of the puzzle. So I know it's going to be a whirlwind over the next couple of weeks. Certainly between now and the trade deadline will be one whirlwind, and then there'll be another leading up to the start of free agency in the new league year. Going to be a lot going on, but we'll see how fast things happen. But I'll be honest. I mean, I don't think this is a bad sign that the Chiefs say that they are interested in the possibility of maybe tagging L'Jarius and letting him find a package deal out there. Because I think there's a pretty good chance that he's going to find that he might be getting a pretty good deal in Kansas City. And if that's the case, and if not, if the Chiefs don't have a chance, I mean, tagging L'Jarius buys them time. They don't even necessarily have to have something done by March 13th. Tagging L'Jarius gives you basically until the draft. So that's the other thing, is that now you've got until the draft to make a trade. So it buys you all sorts of options. There's nothing that has to get done in a hurry. So if that's what ends up happening, that the Chiefs do tag L'Jarius, it keeps all the options on the table. Now, I do think you have to get something done with Chris at the same time, because the one thing is that if you're the Chiefs, the worst case scenario would be that you don't get something done with L'Jarius, you tag him, you trade him for maybe less than you're hoping for, and now on top of that, Chris Jones signs elsewhere, and all you're getting is a comp hit back for Chris Jones in the third round. I mean, that to me would not be ideal. So that's the other thing that the Chiefs are taking some chances here, and this could also be a kind of bluff or an end around to motivate and get something done with L'Jarius. So then that you got the tag for Chris Jones. So, like I said, I'll come back to my. There's a lot of moving parts to this. I don't think it's done by any stretch of imagination. Done deal one way or the other. Sharon, you had the question, about a trade value, and honestly, a mid two for L'Jarius, it probably would be about the best you could hope for. I mean, if you were able to get a top 50 pick, I think that would be really good return for L'Jarius, and that's not an indictment on how good he is as a player. It's more of an indictment about just what the return has been for cornerbacks in recent trades. I mentioned Jalen Ramsey. I'd gone back over it too. 3 years ago, Bradley Roby went from Houston to New Orleans, and I believe that one, I'm trying to remember, I guess that was maybe just a free agent deal. I'm trying to remember for sure. But Jalen Ramsey, I mean, with the third rounder going from the Rams to the Dolphins, the Rams only got pick number 77 for Jalen Ramsey. So that's the concern to me, is that that you just are not going to get the return that you're hoping for if you have to move L'Jarius. So that's the tough part to me. Brandon, I'm gonna turn from the Chiefs will lose Snead to if the Chiefs lose Snead, then what's next? I think obviously if you're the Chiefs, the only reason you're considering, this possibility is that you do feel like you're pretty good shape at the cornerback position. I mean, Trent McDuffie is obviously an emerging player who a lot of people around the league think will be better than L'Jarius, and he has all of those knocks against L'Jarius that we were talking about. Trent McDuffie doesn't have as many of them. Trent is a much younger player. He's also going to hit free agency at a younger age. Chiefs will also have the 5th-year option with him as a first-round pick, so they've got a little bit more team control over him. But Trent McDuffie, if he's your number one corner next year, does anybody have any concerns about that? I won't if I'm the Chiefs. You also feel pretty good about what you've got in development. So you've got some pretty good corners behind that have been, coming up through the system. And Dave Merritt has just done absolutely nothing but crank out corners. So, you look at the strides that Joshua Williams has made and Jalen Watson has made. Now, if those guys are, in a rotation as your 2 and your 3, I think there's, you look at what like Dave Merritt did with Charvarius Ward, and now is trying to do with Echo Boydo and Nick Jones. It was the 7th round. I mean, you've got plenty of talent. You're adding the Najee Johnson back to the mix, who looked so good last year before the ACL. To me, you've got really good depth at that position. So I don't think there's any reason to panic. There's no reason, if you were to lose, L'Jarius Snead, that you don't need to go out and sign someone for big money. It gives you, the catch-22 with it is that now you do have more resources for whether it's Chris Jones or any of the other number of free agents that you could have this year or next year. Remember, if you're the Chiefs, you want to find a way to not only keep some of your guys this year, but you got Creed Humphrey, Nick Bolton, Trey Smith coming up next year. You'd like to keep those guys. So, hey, let's see. I don't think that it's the end of the world if the Chiefs lost L'Jarius. I think it would be disappointing because he is such a good player. They've had obviously great success in developing him. He likes Kansas City. He wants to be here. The Chiefs want him. I mean, you want this to work out for both sides, but it's just sometimes the world of free agency stinks, and that's kind of the evidence of it. Did I run into Florio at the combine? I don't know if I'm on his Christmas card list, that's for sure. Andy gave Florio's handshake a 9 slightly for Andy. Well, I think we all know how I feel about not like Florio. So, and we all know how his prediction that Andy was going to retire, how that went. So, Brandon, did the Chiefs draft cornerback before a wide receiver, considering this is a deep wide receiver class? I mean, I don't know that would necessarily have, like I said earlier, I don't know if I'd have cornerback necessarily as a position of need going into this draft. If the Chiefs did draft a corner, I wouldn't have any problems with it. I mean, if indeed they do, lose L'Jarius, but I don't know if they're in a desperate position where they have to. I think once again, I mean, they're in a spot where for the most part they can go after best available player. I don't think that they're going to be in a situation where I don't see them in a spot right now where, especially like sitting at 32, that you're saying to this team and to Brett Veach, you're in such bad shape at a position group that you have to take somebody at this spot. I don't think that they're at that position. I'll list if you want to say that they're at that spot at receiver. I don't think that they necessarily have to address that at 32. I think they could address that in a couple of different ways, including free agency. There's a lot to happen through free agency, so let's wait to see before you really get too deep. But I will say, from talking to people here in Indy and Brett Veach, addressed it with us this afternoon too. This is a deep wide receiver class, so you're going to find depth in every single round at wide receiver. I mean, there's a pretty good chance that even in the middle rounds and going into day 3, you still may get like second and third round value in the 4th and the 5th round. So, it could very well be a position that the Chiefs don't address early, but still get somebody that they want because there's a lot of depth there. And I think there's some other positions before corner that I think that the Chiefs would target. So I'm sure that will come up at some point tonight, but I don't necessarily think that would be their number one priority. How many jerseys and hot dogs do you need to buy for the Chiefs' cash budget to increase? A legitimate question, because I know this came up on Twitter/X earlier today. I had a conversation about that and about the Chiefs spending, because everybody talks about the cap, but cash is a different animal. The salary cap is what you have the ability to allot for players in a given year, but the amount of cash that you spend in a given year doesn't necessarily connect with that. For example, last year, I think that I think in the chart the results I posted there, I think that the Cleveland Browns spent the most money last year in cash. With a $222 million cap, they spent $293 million, I think it was, in cash. Versus the $222 million cap. The Rams, who had spent like a drunken sailor going after a Super Bowl the last couple of years, were at the very other end. They were like $183 million at the very other end of the spectrum on how much money was spent. And and I guess if we're going to be talking about the Chiefs being cheap, I don't think that Stan Kroenke and the Rams can be accused of being cheap. But what the Chiefs do is that they don't like blowing things up. And that's the one thing that Clark, and I think you can safely say, is at least given a marching order to Brett Veach, and I think John Dorsey obviously had that marching order too before him, and other GMs going back a ways. The Chiefs typically don't want to blow the cap. They don't want to be one of those teams that spends $75 million over the cap, and then in 2 or 3 years are trying to figure out how to cut $50 million in payroll. Look at what the Bills are going to be having to do. The Buffalo Bills this season, they've got tremendous cap problems. The New Orleans Saints seem to live in perpetual cap problems. The Eagles are getting into that position. These are all teams, and the reason why the Rams spent $183 million in cash last year was because they were the number one spender, I think, 2 years ago. So, you have a couple of ways you can go about it. If you're going to spend a ton of money in 1 year against the cap and really blow it up and put a lot of money on the books in that one given year, you're probably going to have to offset the next year anyway. So does slow and steady win the race? I don't know. Right now the Chiefs, as far as cash committed for 2024, they're 10th in the league. Now that is going to change. It could change a lot. If they sign Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed, that's going to just be even more cash going out. So, I mean, and there's a possibility. I mean, we could be, here in a couple of weeks, if the Chiefs do sign L'Jarius and they do sign Chris Jones, we are probably going to be talking about a Chiefs team that spends in the top 10 as far as cash this year. And if that's the case, then I think you'd have a hard time, making the case that that Clark Hunt is cheap. But I think you could certainly make the case that he's prudent. Might be too positive a word. I mean, I think that that's one thing, I mean, that the Chiefs just try to avoid, is they try to avoid being in a super negative situation. And that's the result, is that, every year, Brett Veach is getting just enough money, to kind of max out the cap, but he's not given enough money to max out future year's cap. So even though the Chiefs, have like Mahomes on the book for a lot of money going forward, I mean, that's one of the reasons why, the Chiefs haven't been one of these teams that do, a lot of void years where they, try and move money up, up to 5 years down the road to fit players under the cap now. Just because, the Chiefs have indicated, and whether that's Clark Hunt specifically or the Hunt family, however you want to characterize it, their indication has been that they want to, spend at a slow and steady pace and not just blow it up and go crazy in any given year. So will that change trying to three-peat? I don't know. We can revisit it in 3 or 4 weeks and see where the Chiefs are, because maybe they will do that, and we will have a completely different view of their spending. I don't know which way it's going to go yet, though. Mo Mats, Tyler Lockett, a trade and extend option. Great ball trackers, a deep threads are just too expensive. Nick and I know Nick is going to be popping in here pretty soon. We had this conversation. Either it was on 41 is the mic, or it was offline after 41 is the mic. We talked about Tyler Lockett. Both of us would love to see him. I mean, he'd be a great fit in Kansas City. I feel like that we've talked about Tyler Lockett being in Kansas City so much, and because of his ties here, that I sometimes feel like he's already been a Chief. But I mean, he's incredibly steady. Obviously, the concern is going to be 32 this season. Best football is behind him. I mean, and certainly you look at the numbers this year across the board, there was enough of a tick down, both in aggregate and the averages, that I would say not your, typical. I mean, he's not going to be the Tyler Lockett that you think he is going forward. So you have to have a revised expectations, and that's when, does it become too expensive for where he is? So I know we looked this up, but I'm just going to make sure I get the numbers, straight here. Make sure it is something that's reasonably doable. Does have an out this year in his contract that, but it would still leave the Seattle with $19.8 million in dead cap space. That's a decent amount. I mean, that would be tough. He is due 30.6 plus a roster bonus. So he's due like $34 million. Plus, I mean, you'd obviously have to have the Seahawks will make the move, which I think they possibly could. But you'd also be committing, $34 million to Tyler Lockett in the next 2 years. And based on where his production is right now, I could not make that case. So, I mean, I think there'd have to be a renegotiation. I think there'd have to be some money given back, but I would probably say that would not be in Tyler Lockett's best interest. So, I mean, for him, I think he would be in a better position as far as, getting his money from Seattle, because I don't think that would work as far as, making more. I don't think he'd be making more money in a trade to Kansas City. I mean, maybe somebody moved around, but I would probably say that even though I really like Tyler Lockett, I think he'd be a great Chiefs player. If you're talking about a guy who might be a 600-yard receiver in the next 2 years, I don't know. For the money, I can make that case. So that would be a hard one for me. Any chance you can trade player for player, Snead for Evans? Might be more difficult to do in that way. I don't know if the Bucs would absolutely have to make a move like that. And I think Mike is going to be a free agent anyway. So, hey, yeah, I mean, those are always difficult to do. And usually when they get done, I mean, sometimes there's some salary cap dumps. I guess I think Ngakoue, I guess, got traded last year. It was kind of a 1-for-1 deal. I can't remember if there was a draft pick involved in that one too. But they're difficult to do, and I think for Snead it would be even more difficult because I don't know. And remember, I mean, it's a tag and trade situation, so that makes it even a little bit more complicated. I mean, you have to have getting a guy back that is either also a tag and trade or someone who is already under contract. So it'd be difficult for me to get that done and see. James, do you have any ideas for wide receiver free agents? That's an interesting one because, again, I mean, I know Nick's going to be in here in a little bit, and we have talked about this and looked at it, and some of it is still waiting to see who ends up as a free agent because we're still going to see some players, whether they get tagged, like, T. Higgins getting tagged obviously takes his name out of the running as a potential acquisition. So, that's will not be an option anymore. There's going to be some other, players who do hit the market and become free agents, become available in the next couple of weeks. So it can still change. I mean, it's an interesting market. I'm bringing up my list here so I can try and somewhat rattle off some names. Because at this point, there's just not anything that's jumping out to me as being a great fit as far as maybe age goes, money goes, all of that. I mean, there's just seems like I don't know if the value is going to be there, and that's the other thing too. I mean, one, if you're paying in free agency, you're going to overpay, for production. So, is that something that the Chiefs want and can do? I mean, I don't know about that. I don't know if they necessarily want to overpay for numbers. And that's kind of what you have to do. Hey, Mike Evans, going to be available. He's still putting up incredible numbers. Would that trend downward in a new offense? It's going to be different than what he has done before. Is that going to, would you have to just believe that Mike Evans might be an 800 to 1,000-yard receiver in year one instead of a 1,200-yard receiver? I mean, I don't know that I necessarily believe that. I think he could still be a 1,000-yard receiver in the Chiefs offense, but you just have to always worry about that and know that there's a chance of a greater, outlier outcomes as far as what could possibly happen. So I would always be worried about that. How much will guys want? I mean, I think Gabe Davis has been obviously a Chiefs killer with the Bills. I'd be interested, in him at an affordable price. Tyler Boyd. Davis is more appealing to me because he's so much younger. Boyd's 29. Davis is going to be 25 this year. That would be more intriguing to me. But and Nick, who is popping in here right now, I know will advise me against Gabe Davis because he will tell me that Gabe Davis only makes plays against the Chiefs. So, isn't that right, Nick?
I thought we needed some entrance music this week. I'm sorry.
I didn't hear some entrance music. I stepped all over it.
You did what? Where?
I stepped all over your entrance music.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's all right. We'll save that for another day.
Well, welcome to the party, Nick. Thank you very much for joining us today.
How are you? Yeah. Hey, do you know what? You know how cold it is outside right now? Do you know how cold it is?
I don't know how cold it is in Kansas City. I think it's still in the 60s here in Indianapolis, so I got that going.
Well, chop that in half, and that's what Kansas City is again. Because it was 74 when I was outside at 3, and came out of the grocery store. My truck was reading 34. So I just want you to know, Matt, it is rather cold again. So that's what you have to look forward to if you come back tomorrow or Thursday. I think it starts raising Thursday.
Yeah, it has occurred to me that maybe driving back tomorrow on Wednesday is not my best plan. Maybe I should just hunker down for one more night in Indianapolis and let the winter mix or whatever it is get past me. But
yeah,
I do miss my own bed.
You do have something to do there. You can go to another day of the combine, huh?
Exactly. I would absolutely have that going for me. I would be able to occupy my time.
Exactly. But I got to remind people here. Hold on. Go ahead.
I don't know if you heard as you were coming in that I was saying that you would warn me that Gabe Davis is maybe a little bit of fool's gold as a wide receiver because he only puts up numbers against the Chiefs.
Well, okay, so here's what I'm saying about Gabe Davis. You're ruining part of 41 is the mic for next Sunday. No, I'm just kidding. People have been trying to get me to reveal my running back for the past 2 days before the podcast, which is not going to happen.
Not going to happen. No.
But they're fast. They're a fast running back. And I was keeping tabs with the coaches and GMs today on certain players. I'm like, what'd they say about them? What'd they say about them? Well, oh, it's iffy. Okay. No, but Gabe Davis, part of me thinks he'd be a lot like Marquez Valdez-Scantling during the regular season in this Chiefs offense. He'd be there for clear out routes, but working over the middle, some of the short game and that type of stuff would be a problem. I know he had some drops in Buffalo that kind of fans were heckling him for there towards the end. I don't know if he would be a complete wide receiver for what the Chiefs want in their scheme, but I do know he is 25. I know he is young, but I think you're paying him to run a lot of clear out routes or to try to catch the ball deep. So I think that's kind of what his wheelhouse would be if he joins the Chiefs.
And I mean, it does fit the category. I mean, the Chiefs could probably use a little bit of everything at the receiver position, but I do admit, I mean, his style of game, I don't know if it's the biggest need that they have, but I think it's just more by comparison to me that you look at the rest of this wide receiver class of free agents, and I'm just not enamored with it. But maybe that's just me.
I think there's just certain things you're going after with this wide receiver free agency class. If you're getting them, you're trying to get them to kind of help you supplement what you may or may not get in the draft. So like if you're wanting a really ideal outside wide receiver in this upcoming free agency class that can kind of be your, kind of be that one, you're probably not going to get it from this free agency class because they're getting locked up. But if you're looking for some guys that can work over the middle and can help you be efficient and can get in and out of breaks, there's a handful of guys that can do that. So I think, and they're all within an age range that I think you should feel comfortable with. So there's certain guys that I don't think you're breaking the bank on that you could get to be like a 2 or 3 in the offense and kind of help with that production and not put everything on Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice. And that, I think that's the biggest key, no matter who you get a receiver, who can take pressure off of those guys to kind of help this offense be more dynamic overall. And like I know you were talking about early on in the show when I was driving back, if they need to score more points because the defense can't hold to that same level because they maybe lose somebody or they have injuries or things happen, that's why now is the time where you need to have more explosiveness and better balance on this offense to be able to offset what may not be the same defense. Even if all the guys come back, the defense may not be the same, because the league has a year to figure it out. So that's why I think you always have to be evolving. You always have to be willing to win in a new way. And that's why the Chiefs have gone to 4 Super Bowls and won in 3 different fashions. Because the one time they lost, it was the run it back tour, where mostly they just did what they did the year before. And that ended up failing because they didn't, between COVID and not being able to see the prospects in person, and then also just kind of trying to bring the band back together. It helped them get to that point because you had that continuity, but it didn't help the team evolve, if that makes sense.
It does make sense to me, and I don't like to pat ourselves on the back too much, Nick. But I did just notice what we went over 200 viewers right now. I just want to thank everybody for popping in because that's to me that's pretty cool. So I appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you very much, and I know that's also because Nick is here because that's a big jump before Nick. So thank you,
Matt,
Nick.
In all fairness, there's a lot of people that hate me too. Let's be honest about that. Hey, let me know on Twitter. I'm on a great deal, I promise.
Never. Mark, always a long time. I don't remember if I'd seen you over here on the YouTube stream before. Mark, thanks. Good to see you here. But did Brett Veach say today who was replacing Tillis besides Chris Shea? Yeah, I mean, he did mention that because Chris Shea is going to take over most of the work. I mean, he and Brant Tillis shared a lot of the duties in both contracts, negotiations, relations with agents. all the salary cap. I mean, he and Tillis were kind of a two-man band, and it sounds like they're still going to have a two-man band. Now it's just going to be, instead of Chris and Brandt, it'll be Chris and Jack Wolof, who I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. But Jack's pretty young. I mean, I think this is he had been in, I think, the football administration for a couple of different places for like 5 years before he came to Kansas City. He's like the football, I'm trying to remember his exact title. It is like football administration coordinator. Came in that role in 2022. He's been an intern with the Dolphins, with the Buccaneers. And he kind of fits in that category of, both scouting side and the financial side. So, he's got a lot of experience in both for a young guy. So it kind of makes sense that, they'll have, Chris and Jack sharing that role. Obviously, Chris will be doing most of the heavy lifting there, and not a problem. I mean, Chris obviously goes back with Andy and Brett back to Philadelphia days. So, there's a lot of continuity there. Yeah. Interesting, talking about Brandt and taking that job today. I know there were some questions about that for both the Panthers and for Brett. I may have mentioned this on an earlier Q&A, but how it was described to me is that Brandt got an offer that was just too good to pass up. That he was going to get an opportunity where he was going to be reporting directly to the owner, even if he is, in theory, maybe the number 2 in the GM office, but he was going to have some freedom as far as, reporting directly to David Tepper, who, I get it, is completely insane. I say jokingly so that I don't get sued or anything, Nick, but I didn't say it in my joking voice. So I figured I better just make sure everybody knows there. But it was just, as far as, the freedom, the flexibility he's going to get, probably the money too, I would assume. But everybody I've talked to said, oh yeah, I mean, if I got offered that job, I'd take it as well. So I think it obviously makes great sense for Brandt, but Chiefs will miss him, but I think they're in good hands.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add on that one. You did that one much better than me. I mean, don't get me wrong. Christian knows what he's doing. Brandt knew what they were doing, and those two were rock stars, and that's why one of them is going to Carolina, and you just hope the Chiefs can hold on to Chris Shea as long as they can to be able to help out with that part of it, with the cap and negotiations and all that stuff.
Chris is a really sharp guy. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt. Mac coming in, and I'm gonna let you handle this one, Nick, because I already kind of gave my thoughts before it. Is Mike Evans a real viable option for the Chiefs in free agency?
Well, if I could find the clip from last week where I talked about him, right after just getting to watch him coach himself. Look, I mean, if you get Evans, he's not as explosive as he used to be, and like he's just not that same guy coming in and out of breaks as he was before. Yes, he can catch the football. He can extend his arms out. Good catch radius. He will be a mismatch in terms of size and height in that regard. But you're not getting. You're going to overpay for who he was, not who he is what I'm essentially getting at. And that's the thing in free agency. Whether you're re-signing your own people or you're trying to get somebody new, you don't want to pay for who they were. You're trying to pay for what they can become in your scheme and in your system. So with somebody like Mike Evans, I mean, he has drops that are concentration issues sometimes. He's not really going to run away from defenders for the most part. He's going to make contested catches, and a lot of those contested catches are going to be pretty similar to what Justin Ross, was doing for the most part, or one of the possession receivers. And I don't see Evans as fast as what Rashee Rice is, if that makes sense. When you're looking at the kind of the test scale there, definitely not in McCole Hardman's category either. So, I mean, like you're getting more of a big body possession guy who's kind of on the back end of his career, and more than likely wanting $20 million that you don't investing that I think can be invested in other ways on this roster. I think you can find some good quality receivers who fit this scheme for under 10 million or less. And I think you can find multiple guys for under 10 million or less. So that's where I've mentally been at for a couple weeks now. So the Michael, T. Higgins is off the market. All right. done. We'll see what happens. See if Hunter Renfrow gets released. We'll see if Keenan Allen gets released. We'll see if Mike Williams gets released, or who may get released from some of these cap things coming up here. See if Khalil Mack gets released. See what happens with Joey Bosa, as people try to move some cap around. The only team that's not going to release anybody for the most part is probably going to be the New Orleans Saints, who just keeps kicking the can down the road. That is their annual tradition so that they can stay at 500 and nobody gets fired.
It really is remarkable. I mean, you're not going to win anything because they still don't have a quarterback. But, man, they are just bound and determined to try and go 9-7 every single year.
They're bound and determined to keep the checks coming in. That's what some people need to accept sometimes, is there are organizations that don't actually care about winning. They just know they have ownership that's okay with them being 500. So right now, New Orleans is in that thing. Yeah. And so until the next GM and head coach come in, like I'm just telling you, they're just going to keep kicking the can down the road. And that poor GM that goes in there next and has to eat that roster for a year before they start making salary cap adjustments that needed to be made 5 years ago and weren't. Oh boy, that'll be a job.
You're sending me on two tangents here, Nick. One I can deal with quickly, but I just want to co-sign on your. That's all I ask. I hope they're fun. I need to completely co-sign and probably steal for the future your description about free agency, because I was just simply saying earlier that you had to overpay for production, but your point that you're paying for somebody who they used to be is a better way of putting it, because I would also say the same thing about Tyler Lockett that we talked about earlier. I mean, $34 million he's due over the next couple of years. That's great if it was, 29-year-old Tyler Lockett, but it's not. So the other thing is that, and this is a topic that came up earlier, and I've been having this conversation on Twitter/X as well, is Clark Hunt cheap? And, and I was pointing out, hey, some of the numbers, they've been basically middle of the pack as far as how much cash that they lay out each year. The last few seasons, I mean, basically just right smack dab in the middle. I mean, they're very average, but I mean, part of that is because, they don't take a big hit or, one way or the other every single year. They just spend a steady average amount every single season cash wise. But that's just players, I mean, all indications are that Clark Hunt is getting ready to once again make Andy Reid the highest paid coach in the NFL. And that's not, we don't normally talk about it because, Andy's pay does not get out there very often. No one really knows how much Andy Reid makes. But when we do get repeatedly told, that his deal in the past made him the highest paid coach and his new one will make him the highest paid coach, I mean, you do know some of the deals out there, so you can know that Reid's making good coin. I mean, he's making 10 figures. So you add in that. You also add in the Chiefs have one of the most experienced coaching staffs in the league. I mean, they've got former head coaches on their staff that they're paying to be coordinators. They've got a handful of guys who are going to be defensive coordinators in the league who are on their staff right now. They got an incredibly deep staff. I mean, they don't save any money in the front office, Nick.
No, I mean, they spend it, and then we'll find out on Wednesday morning what else the Hunt family is potentially spending with some of the renderings that'll be coming out that I'm curious to see what they got. And I know people say, well, that's part of the vote. Yeah, part of it's the vote. Clark Hunt and the rest of the Hunt family is still going to pay for, something, a part of that. Like, and that's not going to be cheap. That's not just something that it's not just like getting a hot dog at Quick Trip, There's a lot more to that, and it's not cheap. So, yeah, no, I mean, the Hunt family they spend a lot more than I think people realize or appreciate, and they do care about winning. Otherwise, they wouldn't have paid Patrick Mahomes. Otherwise, they wouldn't be paying the coaching staffs, and they wouldn't be spending the money that they spend. Because as you and I have talked about many times before, like whenever teams get new contracts, that money has to go into escrow. That comes out of an owner's pocket to be able to cover that, because that's part of the rule. So, like, I mean, that's the part that I don't know if people always appreciate is like, hey, that's coming out of their pocket. It's not. It's like, it's not like me. If I had kids and I'm writing a $20 check for lunch money, it's some real world money out there. So yeah. And I've not heard yet I assume that they will, but last year at this time the NFLPA put out their survey of players to ask them about how the teams fared in certain categories, and the Chiefs did not fare well.
in that survey at the time.
Did you see that email earlier this morning?
I did not see the email today. So did it come out and I missed it?
No. NFLPA sent the email. They're doing a presser tomorrow out there in Indy.
On the team report cards. I see it now. You are correct.
So I was wondering, I was like, oh, they're coming out with a new one tomorrow since they gave that heads up. And they're like, hey, media here at the Combine, why don't you come on over here and we'll talk about it.
As long as that is not the exact same time that Darius Robinson is doing his availability, I am definitely going to be there for that one. But we'll see how the Chiefs do this year, because last year they got raked over the coals in that survey. And the Chiefs will tell you that, hey, some of that was, COVID related, that they had some cutbacks and things that they did that, they felt like were reflected in the survey. And then they changed after that. I mean, they changed some of the Chiefs. Really, the players had a lot of complaints about travel. They had some issues with services inside the facility, daycare, a lot of these things, time off. I mean, there were some things that there were some issues that players had, and the Chiefs, I mean, to their credit, said and that they were trying to address them. There were others, that were more concerning, especially about medical care and questions about rehab care and those things that, I'll be interested to see if there's any improvement in that. But also, I mean, I guess one thing is that almost every team did poorly. I mean, there was a few that got some good grades, but for the most part, the players pretty much raked their teams over the coals.
But if I remember correctly, most of the ones that were really positive all had facilities that have been built in the past 5 or 6 or 7 years. That's, I mean, and the other kicker of it is there's twofold for me on this. The first part of it is, okay, that's fine. But would you prefer more money in your pocket to buy things for yourself or for, long-term security for your family? And then the other kicker of it is some of those new guys coming in, they're coming in from universities that have been able to heavily invest in state-of-the-art facilities that are going to be nicer than most NFL facilities because they weren't having to pay for, players. Now, NIL's changing that game a little bit. So down the road here, we'll see if those facilities stay magically as nice as they were before because of how much some people may be paying at NIL. So, I mean, in some ways, it's starting to become where college is starting to become it's starting to become the minor leagues of the NFL at this point. Now that NIL is a part of the game. So I'm just saying, I mean, I get it. I get that there's positives and negatives for any job in any profession. But if there's a profession where I can make $900,000 to $30 million, I'm just saying, that's not a bad thing. And get a pension for the rest of my life too, if I hit 4 years. That as well.
Definitely not a bad thing. Flynn, just like Merritt developed Sneed, he can develop the next day 3 pick. Thanks to the memories. Thanks for the memories there was for L'Jarius. I mean, that is one of the reasons why I do say, I mean, the news about L'Jarius and the Chiefs, possibly shopping him as far as a tag and trade option. I mean, I once again reiterate, there's a lot of outcomes that this go, a lot of different ways, and a lot of moving parts to it. But I mean, that's part of the reason why I would not have a lot of concerns, because Dave Merritt has done an incredible job with developing talent that the Chiefs have gone off to acquire. So I'd feel pretty good. I mean, the only concern is that I do fear that that Dave Merritt might leave in the next couple of years for a defensive coordinator job if it's not in Kansas City. But the short term, I mean, Dave Merritt can coach up anybody you need.
Yeah, as long as he's in that position, you can have confidence in players being developed no matter where they come from. But yes, if there is a time where Dave Merritt is not in Kansas City, then yes, you may have to pay the Trent McDuffies, the L'Jarius Sneeds of the world, and you may have to be willing to invest potentially a little bit more if you don't have a rock star like Dave Merritt coaching your position group, or some guy named Joe Cullen. Those guys are pretty good at what they do.
Yes, they are. Luttrell wanted to know if I make my bet any better than Nate Taylor. And that's a deep cut. I love that question, by the way. I unfortunately can answer no, because I did not make my bed this morning. So I apologize to Andy Reid and to everyone. And I very carefully cropped it so you could not see it. If anything, I guess I should admit the fact that I have two beds, Nick. And I just laid up my clothes on one bed. So it's perfectly made, but I just basically use it as my wardrobe. So all my clothes, all my clean clothes are on it. And yeah, I did. I brought like 4 days of clothes for a 2-day trip because that's who I am, Nick. But I did not make my other bed that I actually slept in. So I was running a little late this morning. I didn't want to take the time. So yeah,
Look,
that's how I roll.
Andy Reid couldn't see it when it was at the podium, or you guys were in the. If you guys,
oh yeah, no, he would definitely, if he can see my bed right now, he would definitely chastise me. So I'm very, very thankful for that.
See, so it didn't happen though. So nobody was going to be the wiser until you ratted on yourself.
Oh, Brandon, any prospects that get you excited or might already be on the roster? I mean, I'm too early into the process to be too excited over anybody in this year's rookie class. So I'm still introducing myself to it. I mean, basically, the people that got me most excited about seeing them in the NFL are going to be players that have absolutely no chance of falling to the Chiefs. So I want to see Marvin Harrison Jr. I want to see Joe Alt. They're not going to be with the Chiefs.
Not with that attitude, Matt.
No, definitely not with that attitude. Not with that attitude.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, Joe
Alt shall see.
I just want to see Joe Alt in the Chiefs uniform. So, like, if they could make that happen, that'd be great. Whatever you got to do to get it done, get it done. I know it's not going to happen, but I'm going to dream until that day.
Dr. Ozzy, do you think the Chiefs would have any interest in Noah Fant or Jonnu Smith? I think there might be some interest, but I'm not sold, Nick.
I think it just comes down to price tag because Noah Fant's going to be one of the top athletic tight ends on the market. So if everybody's in the market for that, somebody's going to pay him pretty comfortably, or they may pay Gesicki comfortably if he comes out from New England. And then with Smith, Smith would fit great in this Chiefs offense. Fant would fit great in this Chiefs offense. They could be a nice combination to pair with Travis and potentially kind of give him some reps of relief throughout a game to kind of help him management-wise throughout an entire season. But, it just comes down to what's going to be the cost. Are they willing to take $5 million a year? Are they going to want $8 million a year? They're going to want $10 million a year? Because if you start going past that $5 million range, I just don't know if that's a viable option in Kansas City. Because, again, the whole thing is going to come down to what does Chris Jones get if he remains a Chief? And then then what does L'Jarius Sneed get if he remains a Chief? If both of them remain a Chief, you're probably not getting much in free agency after that. Can you create cap space? Yeah, you sure can, but you're also going to have to pay for all the little signing bonuses and all those little things and everything. And, that's a whole different other thing that, it's going to come out of somebody's pocket, and it's not just a salary cap thing. But there's that part of that. But, yes, they could help. There's a lot of players that are going to be out in free agency that can help. But it all comes down to what the heck happens with Chris Jones. I'm not kidding. That is going to determine the whole thing. Just like last year when they couldn't afford a lot, it comes down to it again this year. And the question is going to be, hypothetically, say Chris hits free agency. When do the Chiefs what's the deadline? Is it during that 2-day negotiation period, or is it another time? Or is there a certain date for both parties that they want that wrapped up by? And then, how long do you kind of hold out and save that money off to the side during that time? Or do you start kind of going into free agency to get what you need? Or do you want to wait in free agency to begin with and kind of let some guys kind of fall by the wayside and everything before you start diving in and trying to get cost-efficient players who can upgrade your roster? So, yeah, the Noah Fants and Smiths of the world, Smith can technically, since he got released today, or they announced his release today. I didn't look on the transaction wire. I'll do that here in a minute and see if he formally got released today or not. But, yeah, it's, I could see going to a team in the first 3 days and somebody overpaying for him because of his age and his speed. Smith, I think that it all comes down to what kind of number they want. And I'm just telling you, if anything is over $5 million for a lot of guys, I just don't know. I'm just mentally preparing that there's just not going to be those big $15, $20 million things unless it's somebody who's already been on their roster and has the name of Chris Jones or L'Jarius Sneed. Doesn't mean they can't surprise me at the curveball. Just means that that's where my headspace is at.
Yeah, and I had the tab open so I can tell it has not hit the wire yet. So that is just a team announcing they're going to do something that will then take them a few days to actually do. But you bring it up. So, and Casey Harold, good, wonderful member here, Chiefs Digest on YouTube, asking the question, since they are looking to tag L'Jarius Sneed, are you optimistic they believe they're going to be able to reach a deal with Chris Jones? And we haven't talked about it, Nick, so I'm kind of curious about see what you think too about what this means about Chris Jones. And you kind of alluded to a little bit there about your thoughts, but how do you feel that what this signals about Chris Jones negotiations?
I'm not reading anything from it because you weren't going to tag Chris at $32 million, because then you were going to have to move a lot of your cap around, and it wrecks your cap at that point. So, I don't think that was ever going to be a realistic play. L'Jarius Sneed's a more realistic play because it was financially efficient at 19, and it set the number of how high you're willing to go in a year to pay him. So now that bar has been set from a Chiefs perspective of, hey, we were willing to pay this for 1 year. This would kind of be the average if we do this. So what do you guys want to get done? But at the same time, as long as they're leaving things open for him to kind of chat with other organizations, which depending what tag they place on him will allow that, then it allows him to explore the market and see what his value is. So, if a Falcons team or an Eagles team or, somebody else that'll be linked to him later, if those pop up and everything, then you can allow them to do a lot of the negotiation for you and kind of put those numbers in perspective, and then come back to Sneed's representatives can come back and say, well, hey, here's what this team and this team's offering. Chiefs can just match it if they want to. Or they can say, okay, well, now we need to start trying to work out trade compensation. And then and those are interesting scenarios in terms of what they could do trade compensation wise. There's a handful of things I had rattling around in my head that are options with those two teams I previously mentioned. I went through their draft picks and everything. Found some scenarios I like, Matt, but we'll see if any of those are pipe dreams. One of them I know is a pipe dream, but I'm going to keep living it for now. But yeah, no, in Chris, look, the reality is this, free agency is what, 2 weeks away? I think.
Yep.
Technically, less than 2 weeks at this point. So,
negotiation window starts on the 11th, and free agency opens officially on the 13th.
Yeah. So, if Chris reps take it all the way down to that point to see what's out there on the market, then I wouldn't stun me one bit if they took it down to see what other teams are willing to offer, see if the Chiefs are willing to match that. And that's pretty much what part of that unofficial free agency has kind of been for the most part over the past handful of years, is to give guys a chance to honestly test the market and not have to formally sign until, after they get into town that Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, and go from there. So I'm not really reading anything into it. It allows the Chiefs, if they do need to pick up some additional draft picks, it really allows them to more than likely get some day two opportunities if they need it, if they were to move on from Snead.
To me, I do read. I am allowing myself to read a little bit into it, Nick. And part of it is that this is a high level chess move to me by Brett Veach and maybe even by L'Jarius, his agents. Although I think it's much more about the Chiefs and Brett Veach, because one, they haven't tagged L'Jarius. All they're doing is saying, we can tag L'Jarius. We're intending to tag L'Jarius and give him the opportunity to find other offers that are out there, which is a very, very fancy way of the Chiefs basically opening L'Jarius's negotiation window now rather than on March 11th. So they're basically giving him the opportunity, especially, for the next 7 days without using the tag yet, to basically allow him to test free agency and see what's out there. And I mean, that to me, I don't think the Chiefs would be doing that if they were close to a deal with Jarius Sneed. This to me is an indication of you're doing this because you need L'Jarius to see what's out there. So L'Jarius can know that if there's a $20 million a year offer out there for him for 3 for 60, great. Go get that deal and come back and tell us how many draft picks we're getting, and we wish you well and see you in the playoffs sometime, maybe. Who knows? But if that's the thing. I mean, if they're close, then I don't think that you really want L'Jarius going out and finding an offer. My gut is telling me the Chiefs are doing this because they feel like that there's a disconnect in how much they're willing to offer L'Jarius and how much L'Jarius wants. And they feel like allowing him to negotiate will either do one of two things. Either he'll find a deal that he wants and they'll get their compensation and they'll at least get a small win. It won't be a big win, but a small win. Or he's going to find out that Kansas City's offers competitive. And maybe the grass isn't greener out there somewhere else. And if that's the case, and now, L'Jarius comes back and is willing to settle for what the Chiefs are offering, I mean, that's a win. So I don't know the Chiefs really lose in this situation, but I also feel like that they're also more comfortable doing this with L'Jarius because I think they're closer to being on the same page with Chris Jones than they are with L'Jarius. But we will see.
We will see.
To me, it is just like, you're right. I mean, we have 7 days until the tag deadline. Then we got another, doing my math in my head, 12 days, 13 days until the negotiation window opens, and then 15 days until free agency starts. So, this creates kind of an imaginary deadline. So, I mean, like I said, I think it's a great move by the Chiefs just to allow L'Jarius to see what's out there, because I think he might be surprised by what's out there. Because, I mean, the word in Indianapolis is that, he's not going to get like Denzel Ward money. And maybe the Chiefs just want him to see that.
I think a lot of the time the Chiefs and all teams just want players to understand that, no, they're not the big bad villain trying to get a hometown discount. They do try to get you fair market value.
That's a great point.
But you need to go out and explore it. And it's the strategy the Ravens always did. Because the Eagles, and this is, and I'll say this, and I apologize that we're going to go down this road, but it's a fun road, Matt. It's got really good scenery, some cattle over there. But the back in the day with Ozzie Newsome, the Ravens had a philosophy as an organization. They wanted you to test the market, bring the number back to them, and they would try to match it. And if the money was too rich for what they could do, they thanked you for what you did, and they let you go, say, hey, no, we can't, but dude, that's awesome. We're glad you can go get that. You should go sign that. And that's great for you. But then the Eagles always did their deals earlier, 2 years out from free agency if they could, just because it allowed them to get the player at a little bit of a cheaper rate than right before they were going to hit free agency, and tried to give them more money up front to where they're like, oh, all right, hey, yeah, that's a great deal. And a perfect example of that, in my opinion, was the previous deal they signed with Travis Kelce, a while back. That they hit that one perfectly at that time. And they hit it perfectly. They honestly hit it pretty well with Tyreek the previous time, to where they got, a good number, a fair number. He won't agree with it being a fair number, but for all the baggage he had, it was a really fair number that, most people wouldn't get in their lifetime.
I cannot disagree. And now it's 8:10, Nick, and you know what usually happens at 8:10? Lightning round.
Oh,
because I have fallen so far behind on the questions.
I forgot, man, because I haven't been on the entire time. So for me, this is still fresh. Still fresh. Already went to the store. I'm already done laundry today. Only thing I got left is litter and trash, man. So we can steal a few extra minutes from you then. So to get through these questions. Yeah, no, you're good.
I'm still an hour behind on questions, Nick. So
Oh, okay. Well, then lightning round to this.
It's a lightning round it is. Anonymous Mango, fantastic name by the way. Darnell Mooney to the Chiefs, worked with Nagy previously. It would be a nice little addition to the offense. What do you think?
We will be discussing him on 41 is the Mic podcast this upcoming weekend. He will be on the list. I will not say positively or negatively. I will just say that he is on a list, and he has been watched, and that may be one of the guys that could work inside that I talked about a little bit earlier. But I will not go any further than that, because then you have no reason to listen to 41 is the Mic podcast.
He had some really nice numbers under Matt. I mean, I'm growing on the idea, Nick. I'm not gonna lie. I'm growing on the idea. I mean, I don't want to give away your position, but I'm growing to it. I mean, it's got to be for the right deal, and it's got to be, I got to pay the money for the 2022, 2023 version, not the 2021 version. But if you for the right deal, I mean, he's obviously has a body type that would be very consistent with what the Chiefs have had in the past and some things. Not as fast as some people, but he could do some things. This one will be a quick one. Dr. Ozzy, why are media figures acting like a Justin Jefferson trade is a realistic situation for KC? LOL. No shot Veach is giving up multiple firsts to turn around and pay a wide receiver $30 million. I generally agree as well. I mean, I would be very surprised if anything like that came about. And considering the sources on this, I think that it pretty much speaks for itself. But your mileage may vary.
I don't know where the sources are coming from. I hadn't seen this yet today.
They are largely imaginary. So
you can show me
largely Twitter accounts without very many followers or things like that.
Well, because here's the thing I'll say about Justin Jefferson. Would he be amazing in Kansas City? Sure. But he's going to have to do a lot of bad things and create a lot of leverage situations and embarrass the franchise a lot on social media and maybe off the field to really force his way out of there. And that would hurt his image. So I'm just saying for something like that to realistically happen, that is a path that has to be taken to where you really kind of embarrass the organization a significant amount to force your way out of there to where they're too big of a headache. Just get rid of them.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that a headache is what you necessarily need in the Kansas City receiver room right now. So, Jeremy asked,
Matt,
do you feel that
doing that to get to Kansas City? Duh. And then he'll change it all around.
And it'll all be fixed. Yes, because we've never had a receiver who was a head case in another market come to Kansas City and not be a head case here. Was that just too subtle of a Kadarius Toney reference?
Wow. Okay, we really went there. Okay. I have no comment, but thank you. I don't want to end up on his nice Instagram story. I'm
on Indianapolis time. What happens in Indianapolis stays in Indianapolis, right?
Speaking of, what is it,
Jeremy? Cold. So I mean, not as cold as Kansas City, but
get the winning lottery numbers for me, please.
I will see what I can do. Do you feel the Chiefs feel that wide receiver is a position of need? Yes, but maybe my answer would probably be not as much as of a need as I think everybody expects. I mean, my vibe that I'm getting from Brett Veach is, competition vibe, and whether that be through a draft, whether that be through free agency. I'm not getting, like $18 million a year to somebody to come in and save the day kind of vibes from the Chiefs. I mean, they obviously like Rashee Rice. So, I mean, if they feel like that they've got a, 1,200-yard receiver in Rashee Rice on a rookie second round deal, I mean, that is just found gold. So, I mean, that's obviously where they're putting a lot of stock right now. But I think I certainly get vibes of, you build the room around your quarterback that don't have to have a superstar at every position, but have complementary receivers that, play well together. Spend some money if you have to here and there, but I'm not getting rebuilding the room vibes from Brett Veach. I mean, that was certainly, we've heard that from him before, as far as, once rebuilding the offensive line and, and he told us that, hey, rebuilding the defensive line group was going to be a 2-year project, and he nailed that one. But we're not hearing anything as far as, hey, the receiver room's got to be blown up and need to put a first-round pick into it, and you need to put $20 million into it. I'm not getting any of those vibes from the Chiefs.
Yeah, I don't think they're doing a full-on renovation. Imagine the Chiefs wide receivers are a living room that you're wanting to redo, or maybe an unfinished basement. Let's just go unfinished basement. Been watching a lot of YouTube videos this weekend about people renovating basements. It's been fun. It's very relaxing. But so say they're like, hey, this wall, we need to put some new drywall to it, and we need to paint it, and put some padding for the carpet down and everything. But we don't need to get crazy with it. We're not going to put up 3 new walls with it. We're just going to kind of smooth sandpaper this the wall a little bit, make sure that the mud's not showing in between certain parts of it. But they're not going to get reckless with it and spend $20,000 renovating that basement, that spot of the basement. So they're like I said, like the guys I'm thinking of that I'll have on our list on the podcast, they're all comfortable cost. That would be part of a renovation, some pieces that you add on to the room, but not, you're not taking a sledgehammer to the whole thing and just starting from scratch.
I now have a visual image of taking a sledgehammer to Sky to put in a new receiver. Well, all you really need, Nick, is a little faux finishing. I mean, there's no need to get drastic here.
Hey, hold that thought. I'll be right back. You keep going, okay? It'll make you laugh. I promise. I just thought of it. I'll be
all right. We will get Nick back here. I can't wait. I know this is going to be priceless. So if I could remember how to get him out, and bring him back in later. There we go. Dr. Ozzie, do you anticipate there being any further turnover change with the position of assistant coaches? And probably referencing, we did learn from Andy Reid today that Ken Flagel, outside linebackers coach, is choosing to retire. He will not be back next season. That not a huge surprise. I mean, Flagel is going to be 70 this upcoming season, so it kind of makes sense. I mean, certainly he was considering retiring when he left the Eagles in I think it was 21, and Spags convinced him to come to Kansas City. He's got a long history with Andy Reid too, because they were on the staff back in UTEP in the 80s, so they go back a long ways. And they are going to miss Flagel. I mean, his job position was listed as outside linebackers, and he absolutely did work with Brendan Daly on the linebackers. But he was kind of, I called him the shadow defensive coordinator, because he did a lot of work with the twos. And, Steve Spagnuolo's talked about, the fact that they would basically run 2 defenses on practice. And if you were in the training camp, you could see it. I mean, Spagnuolo would take the ones and go off and work with them on the installs and with getting everybody prepped for the game plan that week. And Flagel would take the twos and do the exact same thing. And he took a lot of things off of Steve Spagnuolo's plate, kind of allowed him to be, not have to be in 2 places at the same time. I'll be interested to see if someone else picks up that mantle, as far as kind of being the player, the coach, that kind of runs the second part of practice, because Steve Spagnuolo loves to do that to try and get guys more reps and more experience. So I would imagine they will do that. Andy Reid did not mention any other moves today, so a lot of NFL staffs are getting set, and we have not gotten any indication about any other turnover at this with the Chiefs. There's always a possibility that coaches could take another role at either the college level. Colleges are still staffing up. Just probably still a few NFL jobs available, but I wouldn't rule. I mean, usually the Chiefs don't make their announcement of their staffs until everything is set and everybody's lined up. So it would not surprise me if there's, maybe a couple of maybe just moves within the organization. I know there's a lot of questions about the wide receiver position. And Connor Embry will be back at the wide receiver spot. Obviously, the Chiefs brought in Todd Pinkston last year, who we don't have a great experience in the wide receiver room, but he was working with running backs. So could there be a shuffling of responsibilities? Wouldn't rule that out, but doesn't look like there's going to be any other wholesale changes or a lot of turnover with the coaching staff. And yes, this is
I'm back. Ready to renovate, Matt.
There you go.
Ready. We'll come through. Ready.
This is why I love you, Nick. You are ready.
I'm ready to renovate.
You are ready to.
Let's do this. Let's do this, Matt.
There you go. We don't, and you don't have to rebuild everything. You're not doing that. No, just some some tweaks here and there. Refinishing the cabinets. You don't need to tear them out.
They gave this to me whenever they're building Sprint Center, so I've had this for a while. It's been a solid.
I assume so.
Years, I think.
Maybe they will give you a Chiefs Arrowhead renovation hat tomorrow when the Chiefs announce their what Arrowhead's going to look like if the sales tax passes.
I think I got to wait on that one.
There you go. No hard hat tomorrow, you think?
What?
No hard hat tomorrow for Chiefs for the second or third new Arrowhead?
Not yet. I mean, I don't I don't think they want me to show. They're like, sir, you're here to film it. You're not to here to record it, be a photog. You're not here to help with this. So, I mean, I think it would just draw attention to me when it's really about the Chiefs and Clark Hunt and Mark Donovan really kind of taking center stage,
I'm using Trevor's question here just to give us a promo for this weekend's, this Sunday's 41 is the mic, because we talked a little bit about wide receivers earlier, but I'm going to go hip deep into it on Sunday. So that is your.
All right. I will pull up the list right now, and I will tell you how many receivers I like. I will not tell you who.
There you go. I like this.
Because everybody keeps wanting to try to take away our podcasts, our contents. Like, people were trying to get clicks here, okay? Like, come on. People. All right, running back. Don't you understand?
We're trying to get clicks here.
Yeah, dude. Running back wise, I will give you this too. This is the sneak peek for all of you, and I will do wide receiver. I will not tell you names, even though people keep guessing on Twitter, and I'm not going to tell them. 1, 2, 3, 4 running backs that I really, really like. Two of them I think are realistic. Two of them I think are going to be expansive. And I'm talking like 10 million or more range. Wide receiver wise, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we'll see on 6 and 7. Well, there's about 7 people that I like. 2 of them would be returners. That could also be a 4 or 5. Ooh. So we're satisfying Matt's special teams desire to have a reliable returner.
I did returner on my list of special teams needs. So
no, I will not tell you the wide receivers. I know that's in the comment section right now. It's not happening. If you want to guess on Twitter, you can guess if that's what you want to be a part of it. Dude, everybody keeps bringing up Gibson. Everybody keeps wanting to say Gibson over and over again. Like somebody brought up Pollard the other day. They're like, "Oh, Pollard, you really like him, don't you?" No, not after that ankle injury. He's slow. But I just gave one of them away. See, Matt, this is why you can't keep talking.
Lightning round.
Lightning round.
I've kind of feel the lightning round thing. Brandon, I'm bringing this up because I wanted to key it into something that Brett Veach told us today here in Indianapolis. Brandon, I feel like the Chiefs don't see wide receivers need as much as I do, considering what Mahomes just did with mediocre wide receivers. Thoughts? I see us drafting O-line with first-round pick. I mean, I think the Chiefs could go pretty much anywhere with their first-round pick. I don't see anything being an absolute huge need. They are certainly in best available category position. That, if there's a top 20 player who's fallen to 32, they can absolutely make a move. Wouldn't surprise me if they tried to move back to pick up more picks if there's not a player there that they're absolutely in love with. So I think anything's on the table. But something that Brett Veach said to me, would suggest that I don't know if O-line is going to be a huge area for them as far as the first-round pick goes, because he was asked about the left tackle position and made it pretty clear. I mean, Jawan Taylor will stay on the right side. There's no plans at this point to move him over to the left side. So I think you can pencil Jawan Taylor back in on the right. Obviously mentioned Wanye Morris, that it was great that he got some experience this year. He got his feet wet, but there was good and bad. but he just mentioned the need to bring in competition. And I mean, that's, I think what I'm hearing there is certainly hey, Wanye can probably do it, could play with him, but they want somebody to push it. They wanted there to be a battle there because they want whoever's over their left tackle right now, they want them to be better in September than they are right now. And if that means upgrading from Wanye, if it means Wanye, but he just had to fight off somebody, so he's improved his game since then. But I certainly got the sense that you're talking competition. You're probably talking about bringing in a veteran that, if is not the starter, then it's certainly somebody who gives you depth as a swing tackle. It could mean drafting someone, but I wouldn't consider a first-round tackle as competition. I mean, I think if you're taking a tackle in the first round, you're probably hoping that person starts. We see what happens, Nick. But I didn't really get a vibe from Brett that first round was tackle was going to be their move, and I think that's the only position that they would take. He was also asked about Creed Humphrey, about maybe moving to guard, and didn't necessarily rule that out at some point. And it's worth noting also that I had asked about injured Chiefs coming back, and Joe Thuney is going to be out for 3 to 4 months with the pectoral injury. So he probably won't be back on the field until training camp. So you wouldn't probably see him during OTAs, which would to me make it maybe less likely that they would consider a Joe Thuney the left tackle move. But that also wasn't ruled out today. So there's a lot of things they could do there. But I just, once again, I keep talking about vibes, Nick. I did not get first round offensive line vibes today.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think they're going to live in the wheelhouse of offensive tackle or offensive line depth further down in the draft, depending on how many additional picks they end up having. I think defensive line, they really are going to need to kind of invest in this draft. A D tackle, D end, just keep investing in that position, keep that cost control low, keep throwing numbers at that. And then this is a wide receiver draft where if you get 2 wide receivers, that's, especially in the top 4 rounds, like that's, especially if they're the right ones. If you get those, I think this is kind of a very rich draft at wide receiver from what I've been looking at so far. And there's already guys I like, but that's further podcast down the road. We're not getting into that yet. We're not about that life yet. That's another 41 is the mic after free agency. So you got a couple weeks to wait on that one. But yeah, no, I mean, like, that's why there's so many opportunities, I think, for the Chiefs to, if they lose Chris or if they lose L'Jarius, I think there's an opportunity to get draft some guys that may not be able to replace them in the short term, but can be developed in the long term to make sure that they don't have the drop off at those spots from losing those guys to potentially free agency or trade or anything of that nature. But I don't think anybody, until they're on the board, I mean, until they're on the clock, I don't think we're going to know, we're not going to know who best player available is. And then we'll have a pretty good idea once you start to see the board unfold a couple picks before them. But the one thing I want everybody to remember is this: teams are not going to do them favors. Teams do not want to help them succeed even more and to dominate them, especially the Raiders, because that's all the Raiders have been doing is relentlessly talking about the Chiefs for the past 2 weeks and puffing out their chest about, oh, we beat the Chiefs on Christmas Day, We want to knock them off their pedestal. We want to do this. We want to do that. Oh, they're not going to get a three-peat. Like, the Chiefs are in the Raiders' head, and the Raiders are trying to use them as a sense of pride that they beat them one time. Congratulations. Guess what? They still won the Super Bowl. Like, that's great that you won against them, but guess what? They still went into Murderer's Row of teams in the playoffs and still took every single one of them to church. So Antonio Pierce can run his mouth, say whatever he wants to, and I don't know. It got annoying today to hear that. And so I'm sorry, Matt. That was one of those sugar rushes I got, and I had a little sugar a little bit ago. The rush started.
Oh, I mean,
but it's just like
to run through a wall for you, Nick.
But I mean, like, dude, like the Raiders are just chirping left and right. So I guess my pick for the draft is whatever embarrasses the Raiders even more, so they realize who they actually are and they quit chirping. And every single other team that chirps and thinks that they're going to do well, like Sean McDermott's article this morning about how he's like the little engine that could in the book. He thinks they can get to the Super Bowl. He thinks they can get to the Super Bowl. He thinks they can get to the Super Bowl. Well, cool. You've had your heart ripped out 3 years in a row because you're not the best coach in the league. So congratulations. Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, as long as they're here and healthy, are still going to break your heart every single time. Matt, I went off on a scenic route. I went off-roading this time. It was in 4-wheel drive. There was a lot of mud, a lot of anger. We just 4-wheeled it through.
I think everybody enjoyed that. So I've got no notes. We're good with that. Lightning round.
Lightning round.
Chris, is Jeremiah Trotter Jr. on the KC radar in the draft? I can't see why he wouldn't be. I mean, I know he probably projects maybe a little bit as an inside linebacker, so maybe be more of a Mike than an outside guy, but she's have a need for an outside guy. So I don't know how much you've seen of him yet, Nick, but I mean, the name alone and the production would make you interested.
I mean, as long as the Chiefs sign Drew Tranquil, I mean, I don't know that there's going to be a real big need with having Leo Chenal and Nick Bolton, who's probably going to get a new deal this fall. So I mean, you can invest in the position and everything, but I would have D-line, O-line, wide receiver, if you can get a tight end, in secondary, all above, trying to get another linebacker to be that fourth guy.
There you go. Ronald, thoughts on getting Moody or Boyd, then draft best player available, wide receiver, offensive tackle, defensive tackle in the first 3 picks? I mean, once again, we'll get into receivers on 41 to Mike this week, and you'll get some insights there about where you go in free agency. But hey, I'm like I said, I'm still not completely convinced about where the Chiefs will take offensive tackle, but no doubt defensive line depth was another area that Brett Veach mentioned on Tuesday that I would not be surprised gets addressed, honestly, both in free agency and in the draft. But I mean, of the positions he really mentioned today, wide receiver, defensive line in the draft, I think you can count on that.
Yeah, I mean, like you perfectly said everything, and I already kind of did that before when I ranted, and then I wandered. So I don't know if I want to do it again because I don't know what road I'll go down this time. Lightning round.
Lightning round. Bobby with a hard one here. I'm not sure I'm gonna give a solid answer here, but Bobby wants to know, what would you put the chances on that Chris Jones is back next year? 70%, 40% for Snead? I have a really hard time. I mean, I think on both of these, and Brett Veach really honestly doesn't have much better. I mean, when we asked about it today, I mean, he said it's not 100%. Is it 75%? I don't know. Maybe it's 50%. I mean, that's where I think that Brett Veach is. I mean, it's probably a coin flip on both of them. I don't think it's decisively one way or the other. I mean, I truly think it, and I don't think it's either or. I mean, I still think there's a possibility that the Chiefs could end up retaining both these guys. It just has to be deals that make sense, for the Chiefs, and obviously it's going to have to be deals that make sense for the players. But I don't know. I mean, I don't think I can say any better or worse than a coin flip on both of them. So I guess for me, Nick, I'd put 50-50.
Matt, I got a new rant. It's not about numbers. Okay, I mean, I don't know if they're gonna be back or not be back. For me, we'll go 50-50. Okay, so I know people like numbers. I don't, but we'll go 50-50 on both. I have no idea if they're gonna be back or not. If they come back, that's great. If they don't, Chiefs will move on, still replace them. Is Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid still here? And Steve Spagnuolo and Joe Cullen and Dave Merritt? They are. So then they got a chance. So at the end of the day, here's the thing. I know Chris Jones says he wants to be back here, wants to be Chief, wants to spend his life with the Chiefs, wants to do all that stuff. And then Jerry Sneed said he wants to be back with the Chiefs and everything. Well, here's the thing. Playing in Kansas City comes at a cost. If you want to play with the best quarterback in the NFL, it's going to come at a cost. So if you want to be the highest paid player at your position, that's fine. You can go to a losing franchise and be that. That's fine. And you can remember the memories that you had in Kansas City, and you can think of those fondly while you're sitting home watching Patrick Mahomes win another Super Bowl or go to another AFC Conference championship. If that's what you want, then that's fine. Go do that. But to be in Kansas City and to be a part of this roster and what they have available financially to keep 15 financially secure and to give him everything that he needs to succeed, that's going to come at a price. So if you, and like, here's the kicker. They're like, I just want to be respected. I just want to be the top paid in my position and everything. Okay, well, guess what? You're arguing over a couple $1 million. In your world, that's not as much as it would be in all of our worlds right now. Like, I'll take $500,000 a year. I take $1 million a year. I take that. Yeah, and I get to go to a Super Bowl and win a championship. Sounds good to me, because I could be doing something else that makes me $30,000 a year. I've been in that world before where I made $20,000+ a year to just try to survive. So I mean, it doesn't resonate with me whenever I hear them say that, and then I see the final number and everything. Just like it didn't resonate with me when Chris was outside Ronald McDonald's house talking about how he just needed a little bit more money. I'm like, dude, that is the wrong optics behind you right now to be saying that type of stuff. Like, go to a Quick Trip, a Kinko's. I don't care. I don't know if a Kinko's exists anymore, but go somewhere else. Do not do that in front of a place where those families have real world problems that, are that was tone deaf at that time. And so anyways, I went down another rant. I told you it was going to happen. I apologize. Lightning round is wrecked at this point. But yeah, it just seems, I don't know. It just seems disingenuous to me whenever I hear them be like, oh, I just want this. Okay, well, do you want to win a championship or do you want this? Because championship, and when you have your target on your back and you're trying to do a three-peat, that comes at a cost. Just like every single person that's on here, we've all had to give up something we've all had to sacrifice something in some way for something we care about or someone we care about. So you can't have your cake and eat it too most times.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't begrudge anybody who goes to get the money. I mean, it's your prerogative. Only you can choose what's, most important to you. But this is my second McDonald's, Ronald McDonald House reference of the day, Nick, because I had another conversation with a group today, and the question was, when did Chris Jones and his agents lose their leverage last year? And the answer that came back was in front of the Ronald McDonald House.
Yes. It didn't help whenever they're up in the suite either while his team's playing down there. That was whenever it was officially cooked at that point.
Yes. Lightning round. Two questions in one here, because Jim wants to know what the Chiefs can get for the tag and trade with Snead, and Anonymous Mango wanted to know if a first and a fifth for Snead in a trade is possible. I talked about this before you got here, Nick, but I don't think I've actually gotten the thought from you about compensation for Snead and what you think would be reasonable if the Chiefs went that route.
Mm-hmm. All right, Matt, we're going to hammer it out right now.
Hammer it out.
So, I'm just going to take some hypothetical teams that I've been thinking about all day. This does not mean that this is happening, does not mean that this is being reported. This is your initial disclaimer beforehand. I know Eagles have seemed to starting to routinely get linked to them. I'm sure somewhere I saw that the Falcons may have been linked, but I didn't go chase that down to go look and see at this point. But I'm sure a lot of stuff's going to leak out over this week because it's convention week in the NFL at the Indianapolis. Okay, it's not actually the combine.
There's more gossip going on this week than you will ever believe.
Yeah, that's why I call it convention week, and I wish I was there with you, Matt, so I could go to St. Elmo's at some point as well. But like the kicker is that hypothetically, let's take the Eagles. I'm gonna pull it up right now. You ready?
Lay it on me.
Okay. So the Eagles have what would be gonna do numbers again. I don't like it, but we're gonna do it. Eagles have the 22nd. You got 22nd pick. In the second round, you're getting the 50th pick. You got a 54th pick, and you get 97th in the third round. So, the first thing, what you would love is if you can try to squeeze both their second rounds out of them, or a second and a third, to where they don't feel like they're completely losing in that, but they still have a first and a second. But I don't think the Eagles are going to give up that 22nd pick. I think they would keep that. I think if they were involved in this, I think they would be willing to part with one of the second rounders and a third, and that would help the Chiefs tremendously to have both those. That wouldn't be a bad thing. Now I'm just going to do the Falcons hypothetically. Falcons have the 8th overall pick. They're not giving that straight up for even, they're not giving that straight up for L'Jarius Sneed. But they got the 43rd pick, and then they got the 2 second rounders, the 74th and 79th. So, like, my thing is, would you could potentially get a second and a third out of the Falcons. But here's where my biggest dream scenario is. It's never going to happen, but just like Journey, I'm not going to stop believing. Is what if you offered the Falcons, hey, we will give you our 32nd, and we will swap to that 8th overall pick. And Snead would be involved in that. And then try to see if you can get an additional pick out of it or not. If you can't, but you get that 8th pick, but I would try to hustle another pick out of them if you could. Because really you're swapping positions, and then at the same time, if you could get a third, I think that would be gold. Now, Matt, why would I be offering that? It doesn't mean it's ever going to happen, but why would I be offering that?
I know exactly why you want to go up there to get Joe Alt.
You nailed it. That's the only way the Chiefs will probably be able to get Joe Alt is if they did something like that to where the Falcons technically still keep a first and maybe give up a third, and then the Chiefs still have room to maneuver there if they still needed to get a little bit higher to get that pick. But at the end of the day, I think if hypothetically, if they were to move Snead, which became a possibility with the report today, I think if you can get a second and a third, I think that's a big, big win. I do not think you're going to get them first unless you're working with a team to try to swap positions. And I think that's the only way the Chiefs are going to be able to move up. If there's somebody that they have the apple of their eye is the L'Jarius Sneed potentially being that bargaining chip. Do I think the Falcons want him that bad if they are linked to him? Probably not. But like Journey, like I said, I'm not going to stop believing in this dream, Matt.
And here's where I guess I have appointed myself as a staff vice president in charge of poo-pooing on everybody's dreams of draft package acquirement for L'Jarius Sneed.
I'm just gonna mute you right now then because I don't want to hear it.
I mentioned before you came on that I went back and looked at it and like two of the most comparable trades that have gone down the last few years for cornerbacks. Last year, Jalen Ramsey, who amazingly enough is only 29 years old. I mean, he's been around forever. I mean, I would have sworn he was like 32, but a year ago, 28-year-old Jalen Ramsey went from the Rams to the Dolphins for a third rounder for the 77th pick overall. Yeah. And even though I think, honestly, I think at this point in their careers and where they are, I would rather have L'Jarius Sneed than Jalen Ramsey. I know that I'm an outlier. And the rest, the vast majority of people in the NFL would tell you that Jalen Ramsey is a better player than L'Jarius Sneed. I disagree with him, but I'm fairly convinced that that's. I still think that that reputation is there. And obviously it's still there. Like when morons apologize for the use of the word, but are voting for all pro teams because Jalen Ramsey still gets ahead of that over L'Jarius Sneed. And Bradley Roby went as a 28-year-old in 2021, went from Houston to New Orleans for a third and a sixth. I'm just not encouraged whatsoever and generally here, I will tell you, here in Indy, the conversation about, what the Chiefs could possibly get, started with first rounder. No way possible. A mid-second being the highest end. And that wouldn't surprise me. That's kind of where I think that, the best, and if the Chiefs got a mid-second plus something else, I think that would be great. I'm with you. If you had an opportunity to go up from 32 to get into the top 10 to either get a decade-long left tackle or a 8-year-long wide receiver, I I'd put Darius Sneed and plus something in it to move up, 22 odd spot. But that's my long way of also destroying lightning round.
It's all right, man. It's been destroyed for a while.
It has been. Dr. Ozzy has two questions that I really like, so I'm going to go these two. And then, even though I know Dr. Ozzy's supposed to still be in the doghouse from last week, but I like this question. Who's the guy already on the roster do you think is being overlooked as people dream about draft and free agency? I'll say it. I mean, if the Chiefs don't have Mike Dana back, I think they're really going to miss him. I mean, he is just such a integral little glue piece who can play any position on the defensive line and just does some dirty work. I mean, he's not, I mean, I know he's not a double-digit sack guy or anything of that nature, but I think you're going to miss that experience and the flexibility of that guy if he doesn't come back.
Yeah,
anybody, Nick, that?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely going to miss that. I'm pulling up the depth chart right now because I don't know if there's necessarily anybody in that just went to the official team store. Didn't want to go there. I don't know. I heard this Rashid Rice guy is going to be pretty good. No. There's not really anybody that I'm kind of like, well, here's what I don't know if they're necessarily being overlooked, but the person I'm really intrigued to see who they will or won't become is Felix Anudike-Uzomah. Like, what can he do with a full offseason, strength training, and how much better can he play the run next year? And can he kind of be the guy that you kind of saw coming out of K-State with a full year under Joe Cullen? That's the number one person I'm really intrigued to see. I guess I'm really curious to see what Najee Johnson looks like whenever he comes back, because he was having a strong training camp and he was going to push for some.
Yes, he was.
He was going to push for some time and snaps, and then finally Nick Jones. Nick Jones was really starting to kind of come on there towards the end of training camp before he broke his hand, and then the wide receiver that I am actually going to be very intrigued to see is I'm going to let you say it, Nico. It's
Nico Remigio.
I said it right this time. All right.
You did. You got it. Nailed it.
He reminded me a ton of Albert Wilson at training camp. Just the way he cut, the way he worked.
And that's a compliment, people. That's a compliment.
Like, I really, yeah, Albert Wilson at the end of his tenure when Mahomes was throwing him the ball. Yeah, I'll just say,
I always love that. Albert Wilson always did the dirty work. I mean, Albert Wilson freed up a lot more guys than people ever gave him credit for.
Yeah. So, like, I'd say those are guys that I'm personally really, really intrigued to see what they can do. Wanya Morris, I'm just curious to see where he's going to be at strength training wise by the time he gets into training camp when the pads come on. What kind of lift program they have for him, because I think that's going to really determine if he will or won't be the left tackle this year.
There you go. Lightning round for Dr. Ozzy's second question, which I hadn't really thought about, but he asked a question, so now I'm compelled to think about it. What would you like to see from the stadium reno plans that are coming out on Wednesday? I mean, I'm intrigued. I mean, I'm assuming there's no roof. I mean, we'll see. I mean, because Clark Hunt keeps, pontificating. I was saying that Clark Hunt continues to pontificate eloquently on my microphone being unplugged, but he also continues talking about outdoor football. So I'm assuming there's not going to be a roof, but I think there should be a roof. I mean, I'm sure that we'll get a lot of stuff that, I mean, I know fans will appreciate. I mean, there needs to be a more enclosed building. So I think that having more of the stadium that's weather protected, whether there's a roof or not, would be great. I'm sure there will be more suites. I would be very interested to see that if part of the stadium renovations, that renovations to the facilities would also be included. I mean, we'll see what kind of bells and whistles they throw in there. I mean, maybe there'll be some holographic replay. I don't know. I don't know what else we can get in there, Nick. What do you want to see?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm curious to see what they're gonna, like you said, I'm curious to see what they're gonna do from a suite perspective. I'm curious to see what they would potentially invest in that could allow for more events to be in Kansas City down the road here, that they could potentially attract here, whether it's concerts or whether it's more monster jams or something different that we haven't even thought of yet that could kind of, maybe be there at Arrowhead Stadium. That's part of what I'm interested to see. And then, like you said, I am really interested to see if they have a plan on the practice facility and what they may or may not be doing with that. So, I mean, it's kind of a wait and see approach for me, but they have my interest tomorrow at 10 a.m.
I'm not expecting it, but I guess this fits in with your, what will they do to make, Arrowhead more attractive as a destination for events other than football. So I guess that kind of fits into this, but that is, yes. I mean, how do you, is there going to be anything in there that's designed to make Arrowhead a destination other days out of the year? I mean, I don't think that there's going to be a shopping mall or anything like that, like New England has, but I am, yes, curious, of not just accommodating Arrowhead for events, like you mentioned, making more of events that they've had in the past and more concerts than they've had in the past. Just curious, what else that they want to include in there. I don't think that, I'm not sure that, with the renovations you would throw in a removable field or anything of that nature. I mean, I guess we will see. But I would be intrigued because I know that the Chiefs, I mean, a big part of their ability would be to be able to make more revenue from events, and having more events would be being able to accommodate international soccer and bigger concerts and everything like that. So,
and Matt, what happens when you have
see?
And what happens when you have more events, Matt?
The turf gets torn up.
Okay. When you have more events, you make more money.
Make more money.
Free agents. Or your own players.
There you go. I mean, there you go. I mean, right there. If you want more, just to spend more money, you need a couple of more Taylor Swift dates. So there you go. Yeah. Bringing this one up because we have talked about this. I know we talked about this offline. I don't know if we actually had a conversation online about it, but Anonymous Mark Mango having some good questions tonight. When will it be announced who the Chiefs' opening game will be against? I'm trying to remember. I don't seem to believe that they do even though the Chiefs now have been playing in the season opener, it seems like almost every year. I don't believe that they do it anything special other than when the schedule release week starts in May. So I don't think it will be any earlier than that unless there's an oddball that the league throws at us. So that mid-May, second week of May kind of time frame, I'm assuming, is when we will find out. And whether, at least my prediction, I don't know if you're co-signing on the prediction, Nick. I mean, I'm predicting CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans at Kansas City Thursday night to open the season, September 5th.
I'll go with I'll do your part first and the second part after this. Well, I know the other one you had put out there that really kind of stuck with me as well. If it wasn't CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans, was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If Baker Mayfield's back, because I know you brought up a really good point where they're trying to have AFC versus NFC to kind of fully represent both conferences on that first night and not have it necessarily impact the playoffs as much as you would want later in the year in December and January. So those two, yeah, because like you and I talked about, like, I mean, Michael North on that podcast, who's one of the people that puts the schedule together, like he was really on that podcast. He was really wanting to get CJ Stroud in more prime time and kind of more spotlight games, and so this would be a way to do it, to have him go against the defending Super Bowl champions, as long as you're okay with it being AFC versus AFC. But I mean, we'll see what happens to Baker Mayfield. But yeah, I mean, those seem like the more likely ones because a lot of those other big games, man, you're trying to divvy those out between CBS, Fox, NBC, and ESPN because the Chiefs have a lot of quality games like that. Chiefs 49ers game, I'm curious to see if Fox is going to try to save that one or if that one somehow ended up on either Sunday Night Football or ESPN. So yeah, no, it just like there's some interesting ones that I mean, the Chiefs have a lot, like the Chiefs Ravens game. You're wanting to try to save that one for a late December, and the Chiefs Bills, you're wanting to save that for middle of the year type of thing, and then the Chiefs Bengals you're wanting to save. So I mean, like the Chiefs have a lot of those past playoff matchups that you're really not wanting to use in week one because you already know the Chiefs are going to draw no matter what ratings wise because of Mahomes. So like you don't. And then the Thursday night game, you're going to have probably be an AFC West opponent like it's turning into more and more. It's just a matter, is it the Broncos or Chargers? Or is it the Raiders if they keep chirping? Maybe the Raiders, if they keep chirping, they may get that Thursday night game. So, yeah, no, it'll be I mean, that's the thing. If you go through the Chiefs' entire schedule, they have they create so many compelling storylines for the entire NFL that most of the Chiefs games are going to be 325 or later again. I've accepted that part of my life.
Yeah. And I mean, and this just a great example of how the NFL schedule and honestly free agency and retirements absolutely do change things. Because remember, 2 years ago, 2022, the Chiefs desperately wanted to play on the road in Germany against the Buccaneers. And when it was going to be, Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes, the NFL was like, there's no way that we're taking Brady and Patrick Mahomes and taking it overseas. Even though the Chiefs are saying, why wouldn't you? Because it's like, hey, if you want to grow the game internationally, nothing like taking your two biggest stars and sending them to Europe. But the NFL was like, no, not going to happen. Then when Brady retired, that was the game. I mean, the NFL was like, all right, so Brady's not there. So, all right, if you want to go to Germany and play the Buccaneers in Germany, you can go for it. And that was all set. The Chiefs were going to play Tampa Bay in Germany. And then what happened? Tom Brady unretired. And the NFL said, yeah, no, that game is not going to Germany now. So if Baker, I will go with that one. If Baker re-signs with Tampa, I think that one becomes a most likely the game. I think you're right. I mean, I think that the NFL would love to get CJ Stroud on Thursday night against Mahomes on opening night. But if they want to make it a lower marquee game that doesn't have as huge an impact on the playoff potential of the teams, then yeah, because the other option would be the Saints, and I have no interest in seeing the Saints on Thursday night in Kansas City. That, don't need to see a 9-8 football team. Even though Buccaneers were a 9-8 football team, but you'd have Baker Mayfield and Texas Tech and Patrick Mahomes and that storyline.
Mm-hmm.
So lightning round.
Lightning
round. You think tomorrow's stadium reno announcement be mainly for World Cup prep? No, I mean that'll be totally separate. The only question I have is whether some of the renovations that are done for the World Cup end up staying afterwards, because previously the Chiefs had been talking about the changes that they have to make for the World Cup to make the field large enough was going to require taking out some seats and everything, then putting it back in. But honestly, I mean, if you're the Chiefs and you want to get more international games in the future, I mean, I know you're not talking about being able to get World Cup games for another probably 20 years, but if you are the Chiefs and you want more international friendlies or anything of that nature, and you want some big teams in Europe to come over and play in Arrowhead, you need a bigger surface. So I don't know why they wouldn't necessarily just go ahead and keep some of the renovations after they put them in, and rather than taking them back out again. But so I am interested to see if those are included.
Yeah, the best way I can say this, Darren, is they're having to sell, they're having to help sell voters on voting yes. So you're doing this by putting you're putting your best Sunday dress on for this, or your best Sunday suit or whatever for it. And not a tuxedo t-shirt like I got, that I've worn on a couple of shows we've done. You're wanting to really kind of showcase, hey, here's what we're going to do with this type of money. Here's what it can be. Here's what it can bring this town. That's why you should vote yes on April. I didn't put in the date and all that stuff because it would be full promo. I don't want to do that. No, So, but yeah, no, I think they're going to try to get voters excited about why they should vote yes for it.
That is absolutely. I mean, Chiefs and the Royals are going to be alternating doing these events. I mean, it is all part of the campaign. There is no doubt about that. Al, if Sneed is not paid, that's Al with the 41 logo and everything.
Yeah, he's one of our rock star photographers at KSHB 41.
Yes, he is. Well, I love it. He wants to know, if Sneed's not paid, does that signal to the other players that long-term contracts are hard to come by?
I could have asked me this in the sports department privately, but it's making me do it publicly. No. Look, I mean, like I said earlier, this is kind of the price. This is the price to pay to win a championship. So it doesn't mean that it doesn't. I mean, you're arguing over probably a couple $1 million a year. So like it's not that I don't think it's necessarily that it's hard to come by. It's just like they're at a point right now where about 100, if I remember correctly, I counted it up, about 160 million of their cap is invested in 8 or 9 players, I think, of an entire 53 man roster. So like, I mean, they're, like Mahomes accounts for the equivalent of 2 Chris Joneses basically. Travis Kelce really doesn't make the same level as what Mahomes does. Like Kelce is almost like 4 Patrick Mahomeses in terms of finances. Like, I mean, to have the best quarterback in the league, like the sacrifice you make is you're going to have to continually develop younger guys, but you're going to get a lot of spotlight games to be able to showcase yourself for free agency. And, if you become one of those pillars on the team and one of those veteran leaders, then you potentially could get paid. It's just a matter of, do you want to get paid top dollar, or do you want to sacrifice a couple million here or there to have a handful of rings? Like that's kind of the choice.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily believe that this is the intention, and I'm not sure that it's would even be articulated by anybody in the front office.
Yeah.
But I think there's one thing that the Chiefs would like to do to send a message, and it certainly would help them because they have obviously given a big contract to somebody. I mean, it is Mahomes, obviously. I mean, they've done now a couple of times, so they will give extensions. I mean, obviously the best player in the NFL, but they also extended Mahomes in his early window. I think the Chiefs would love for anything for somebody other than Mahomes to finally extend after year 3. And some of that, before they go into their 4th year and everything, and then you have to go through this. I mean, I think that's, like I said, I don't think that's necessarily a goal per se, and I don't think they would articulate that way. But I don't think there's any doubt. They have been frustrated that they haven't been able to sign anybody after year 3 when they want to lock them up, because that's when, I mean, Brett Veach on his opening day press conference said, if you want to keep somebody long term that's in your team, you got to lock them up before that final year of the contract, because after that it gets just too hard and too expensive. So that's when they would love to do it. But obviously they've had a lot of players who I think wanted to bet on themselves, because the Chiefs were absolutely hoping in some of these cases to be able to get below market deals to give security after year 3 before the final year. But they love it more than right now, because right now, do you want to go in? I don't think either one of us would want to go into next offseason with one franchise tag and Nick Bolton, Trey Smith, and Creed Humphrey all hitting free agency.
Yeah, you don't want that to happen. So hopefully get that figured out in September, October range.
Yeah, that would be tricky. Duncan asking if I was going to be on RGR for the draft. We are talking about that and trying to figure everything out. So I just said it's a distinct possibility. So we will see. Lightning round. Matt, what's your 40 time? I think I would fit into the category, Nick, of where the coach once said that you could measure it with a sundial. That would be my 40 time.
So they're talking like currently? Are they talking currently? Or
well, I'm answering it currently, but my 40 time would have been measured with a sundial in my prime. So,
okay, because whenever I did it in my prime, and I'm talking like because we had our own little combine back when we were in high school, I think I had a 4.98. So I think that was my 40 time at about two. I know what we had on my roster was wrong, because we had me at 248, but I was pushing 268, 270 back then.
I was always one of those guys that I was Mahomesian, I like to say, in that my game speed was faster than my practice speed. So what my time on the field would be faster than it would be in just a sprint. So,
but all I know is my buddy, that was our running back, Michael Keenan, 2003 Simone Award winner. He ran a 4.34 in front of us. That was rather fast. That's why he went to Nebraska on scholarship.
There you go. We actually are getting kind of low on questions. I think we have almost caught up. I mean, I know we even though I'm still almost 20 minutes behind on the thread time, but everybody's having a great time with the comments and answering their own questions. So I sometimes I don't even have to answer them. There's an interesting one. Duncan coming back. Would you consider a 1-year flyer on David Bakhtiari if he passes a physical for the right price?
Yeah,
I would.
First off, he's got to pass the physical. Like, I don't know if he'd be able to do that. And then secondly, that dude's wanting to go join Aaron Rodgers in New York. Yeah. So, like, you're competing with Aaron Rodgers.
Or Tyron Smith.
Well, that I think if you did get somebody like Smith, I think you're doing that more so either right around the draft or after the draft, like you did with Donovan Smith. And somebody may already pick, Tyron up at that point, but yeah, that's kind of the ballpark. And when I think you're trying to add somebody like him to be kind of a insurance policy if Wanya doesn't get to, if you want to have him compete with Wanya.
Lightning round. Brad, did BJ Thompson gain any weight this year? I'm only bringing this up because I just want to point out how difficult it is to gain weight during a football season. I mean, it's hard to do, especially from a weight training standpoint. And I get, BJ wasn't active this year, so you could, but the argument, the belief that you could, put him on a weight program during the season, that's not realistic. I mean, if you're a player and you're a project like BJ was, I mean, his biggest leap was always going to be from year 1 to year 2. It's this offseason that if their plan for him is to put some weight on him and see if his frame can handle it and maintain the speed that he has, that would be the way to go. But you can speak better to it than I can, Nick. But the idea I've never seen. You see some guy, I guess, that maybe just eat a little too much who do put on weight during the season, but most guys are just dying trying to keep weight on during the season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't personally know what he did or didn't, do during the season.
I mean, he's still pretty thin. I'll give him that. But I haven't weighed him, so no, I can't speak to it.
Yeah, I was just saying. I'm like, hey, BJ, you got a couple seconds here. I need to have you step on the scale over here. So that unfortunately didn't happen. But no, I mean, like you said, Matt, I mean, that time of the year, how much they got going on from how much running around they do during practices. And then on top of that, with the strength training that they do or whatever they may have to do cardio wise, depending on what all they got going on, like you're burning so many calories at that time. But yeah, when you get to the off season and maybe you have a couple burgers or whatever, then those, and you take a little breather, let your body heal up. Those things can happen.
I'm bringing up all the comments from your rant, Nick, because they are absolutely fantastic. So
I shouldn't have had the sugar. Shouldn't have had the sugar.
Everyone loves Nick rant, and that's the thing. I mean, we haven't had a Nick rant on the 41 is the Mike podcast the last couple of weeks, so. Well, people need to rant, Nick.
Well, the league's got to do stuff that day that we're taping for me to be agitated by.
All right, we've got 2 trade offers coming in as our last questions on here. So I guess if you have any other trade offers you want to throw us, throw them in there. But here's the last 2. Would you trade Sneed for Josh Allen, the edge rusher?
No. That's I mean, like Josh Allen, I know he worked with Joe Cullen down there in Jacksonville and got the best out of him. And Josh had a really strong performance against the other Josh Allen whenever Cullen was the DC down there. And I mean, he may or may not hit free agency. We'll see. But I think he's going to cost like $20 million a year if he hits the market or getting a new deal. So I think you're really, if you're doing that, then I think you're taking away the chance to re-sign Carl Loftus long term. And you're kind of really putting Felix Anudike-Uzomah behind the 8 ball again, in terms of like you're pushing him back down on the list to where he's not going to get the reps that he really needs to this year. So doing that type of thing, no. But there are some defensive linemen that, if the Chiefs did get draft picks, that I think could potentially be used for him.
Yeah, and because I'm just looking that right up right now to see what kind of the economics of it would be. I mean, it's not. I mean, I would certainly consider it. I would imagine the Jaguars would probably be the ones that. But yeah, I don't. I guess. I mean, franchise tag for franchise tag. I mean,
Basically.
yeah, you'd still run into the problem of having to pay him. So, yeah, I mean, takes two to tango. So, trade Snead for AJ Brown.
I don't think that one's happening straight up, because I think AJ Brown's very valuable for them, and I feel like just playing this theme song while I do this, so I'm gonna do it. So Matt, do you know what song that is?
I do not.
I was hoping it's Doogie Howser, WebMD. Come on. Come on.
Well, as long as YouTube doesn't flag it as a copyright strike, Nick, come on.
My bad. My bad. So hope you enjoyed watching this live, because apparently you're not going to see it again.
You may never hear it again.
Yeah. No,
I don't know how litigious the Doogie Howser theme people are.
I think the Chiefs would have to give up draft picks if the Eagles are wanting to do that, but I don't think the Eagles want to give up their best wide receiver. They didn't sound like it in their press conferences today, and it didn't sound like it from what AJ Brown, when he called into the Philadelphia radio station and basically said that he wanted to be there. So I don't think that would happen. I think it would just end up being picks if the Eagles were involved in it. Doesn't mean it wouldn't be awesome to have AJ Brown in Kansas City, but I just don't personally think that it's going to happen in that A to B trade scenario.
Yeah, when you're talking about especially a player like Snead that's in the needs a new contract situation, trading for players can get really tricky. I mean, not that one can't be included, but just a straight up player deal is really hard to get done. So, and I see Brandon was saying that we need a Matt rant, and then he follows it up with Mike Florio said. So he knows there's no way you push my buttons better than telling me something that Mike Florio said. So
I won't. I won't do it.
All right, it's 10:13 here in Indianapolis, so I guess I need to head up to Steak and Shake and see if anybody's dropping by, for some cheeseburgers after, going to the shrimp cocktails at St. Elmo's. So I'm told Steak and Shake's the place to be at midnight. So,
I mean, that was revealed by a certain NFL reporter. So yes. And I'll just answer Chris's question. No.
You got one more from Chris here?
Hassan
Reddick?
No, you're not. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Eagles would probably be willing to shop that, but I just don't want to do a player for player thing. Like, just get the picks, man.
I mean, I'm with you. I mean, from some of those, I mean, yeah, would I like to see AJ Brown in Kansas City? Sure, but I think I like the picks more. So, but we shall see. What it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks here until we get the franchise nation next Tuesday, 3 p.m. is the deadline. We'll see what happens between now and then. The Chiefs and Jerry Sneed, and March 11th when the negotiation window opens. Then March 13th, free agency begins. It's a busy couple of weeks, Nick, and we obviously will be answering your questions every Tuesday. And if I can continue to, I don't really do anything. I did bribe Nick with something, so I did finally reward him with something.
I was going to show up either way. Got so many props in the closet that I need to use, Matt. Okay, I need an outlet to do it. No, just kidding.
And of course, we will continue to be breaking some different topics down on 41 is the Mic each weekend on Sundays. So you're going to be continuing to get that. And this weekend, we're going to be looking at some free agent prospects the Chiefs might be interested in just before free agency begins. So you got that to look forward to, and we'll see what else pops up here. I'll be in Indiana and in Indianapolis through at least Wednesday. Maybe the weather will force me through Thursday. I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll play it by ear, Nick. But anything else we need to mention?
No, because I mean, that, like you said, those. So as I said, yeah, during that 2-week span that you're talking about, we're gonna have the Big 12 tournament in town. Women's is the week before, and then men's is gonna be the week of free agency, and then that weekend, Kansas City Current officially opens up their stadium on that Saturday. So I mean, and then March Madness selections will begin less than a week after free agency starts, and then be tournament time, and then you'll be doing your brackets. So yeah, this upcoming week is like the last true week of like just not having a lot going on in terms of locally Kansas City wise. And then before you know it, I mean, Royals will be having spring training the entire time. Sporting Kansas City's already back in action, because I got to think of all those things, Matt. Okay. I got all those juggling.
And in addition, Wednesday there will be the unveiling of the renovations that are planned for Arrowhead if the sales tax passes in April. So we'll see where I am as far as travel goes, and if I get a chance to kind of break those down Wednesday night or early Thursday, you might see some video on the YouTube stream doing that. But also, in addition to everything else that's on there, I mean, the Chiefs will be continuing to do some events over the next month. So you're going to hear from Mark Donovan. You're going to hear from Clark Hunt. They're going to be doing some other things for the campaign. So the Chiefs will be campaigning actively. So tomorrow's announcement with the renovations will not be the only thing you hear from the Chiefs as they try to get that thing over the finish line.
Yep, that's all I got, Matt. I'm in my 2024 era. That's what my shirt says.
I could see the number and everything, and I thought that I bet if it says in my 2024, I'm sure it's era, because I know you are a Swiftie at heart.
Okay, now you've gone too far. I'm gonna leave you at this point. It's not nice.
I appreciate everybody for popping in. We will see you again here next week on Tuesday night. And of course, go over to 41 is the mic, hit subscribe there, and you'll get us this Sunday in your stream too. Take care, everybody.